Welcome to r/entitled parents, where a spoiled brat eats a live crab at a pet store. Our next Reddit post is from Magroony. For context, I work at a mom-and-pop pet store in the eastern US, and while my expertise is in aquatics, I try to be a jack of all trades. The day that this happened was rather uneventful up until this point. Until entitled kid and entitled mom entered the store. My store was pretty modest, so it was fairly easy to see customers come in and out, especially in the fish department. So I got a good first look at these magnificent creatures. A 40-something-year-old woman talking on her cell phone, her hair obviously dyed blonde, and an outfit practically screaming midlife crisis while her child was in tow. The kid must have been 7 or 8, playing on his Switch, his shirt covered in what looked like a mixture of pizza sauce, soda, and plenty of mystery stains. At first, things were pretty normal. The kid originally not caring about anything in the store, while the mom was getting enraged at him for not paying attention. Though that changed rather fast. The two of them were near the ferrets, when the mom took the kid's Switch, immediately causing a reaction of screaming and pouting before being distracted by some of the fish over in my department. The first thing the kid did was head over to the small assortment of hippo tangs that we had, practically pressing his stained, covered face against the glass as he yelled out, "Dory!" as loud as he could. For context, hippo tangs are the same type of fish that Dory is from Finding Nemo. The mom hailed me down from my algae scrubbing, and this started the encounter. I said, "Hey there, how's your night going? Need help with something?" The mom started our encounter with a roll of the eyes before pointing to the tang and demanding a price with a simple but rude, "How much for this thing?" I told her the price was $160. It was a good-sized tang. Of course, she scoffed, but what came next was a bit more worrying. The mom pulled out $30 from her purse and placed it on the desk that we used to bag fish, saying in an aggravated tone, "That's all you're getting. Bag him." Things start to go poorly from here. It's worth noting that it was 9:15 p.m. at this point, the store having closed 15 minutes ago, though we make it a policy not to ask customers to leave until 9:30. I asked her, "Do you have a saltwater tank?" She did not take this well. She screamed, "That's none of your effing business. Now bag my fish, you cocky little turd." I simply refused and slid her $30 back towards her before she slid it back, now more pissed off. "I'm gonna get you fired if you don't bag my fish right now." At this, the kid was getting pissed at the interaction, screaming like a banshee about how he wanted the tang, still referring to it as Dory, and beginning to stomp his feet in a tantrum. Soon enough, I was asking them to leave. So, this is where I messed up. I should have called the cops at this point, knowing that she wasn't going to leave without a fight. The kid was down on the floor at this point, pounding his fist to the floor as snot dripped down his face and as the mom tried to guilt me. "Sorry, sweetie, this guy doesn't want you to have the fish. He's perfectly fine with you having no fish friend to make you happy." At this point, she turned back up to me. "Do you see what you did, you stupid idiot? You're breaking my angel's heart because you're being too much of a JEW to sell me the fish." Internally, I was laughing. This kind of situation happened now and again, but the anti-Semitism is a new one. I had figured everything was starting to resolve at this point, though I was mistaken. The kid flipped out. You know how some opera singers can break glass with their voice? This kid would have a knack for something like that. He was screaming as loud as humanly possible at this point, as he managed to reach into a tank. At last, my manager had made his way out of the office and was watching what was going on. The kid had grabbed a piece of live rock, accidentally grabbing a long-spined urchin. Angry screaming turned right into wails of pain as he pulled a rock out of the tank, a poor little pom-pom crab in tow. At this point, I was less focused on the kid and more focused on making sure my manager was calling 911, which he did. When I turned around, I saw something that still gives me nightmares to this day. The kid had been clutching his hand while his mother tried to help him, with something hanging out of his mouth. The poor little pom-pom crab had been crushed by the kid. The kid had shoved it into his mouth and was chomping down on it, leaving a little claw hanging out of his mouth. The next 2 minutes were a strange combination of astonishment and panic. Me telling the kid not to move his hands since he would break the spines of the urchin, while the mom began hitting me with her purse, screaming that I hurt her kid. I said, "Your kid shoved his hand into a tank with toxic animals and did this to himself. Calm down and leave him alone, so when the paramedics get here they can get the spines out." How dare you? You expect me to let my angel suffer? If you just sold me the stupid fish, this would have never happened. I said, your kid reached into the tank and ate the crab. What the F did you teach this kid? Don't you ever tell me how to raise my angel. He had the right to eat that crab. You took something from him, he took something from you. By the end of this interaction, the paramedics had arrived, restraining the kid and taking him to an ambulance as the police tried to sort things out. Unsurprisingly, the mom tried to pin everything on me, saying I threw the urchin at him. What the hell? And that he ate the crab in a panic. Equally unsurprisingly, we had the entire thing on CCTV, including the mom hitting me with her purse. Long story short, the mom was arrested for aggravated assault as apparently she had stuffed the rock into her bag to give it the extra punch. I didn't notice until the paramedics saw me that I was bleeding on my leg from the jagged live rock. After getting a statement, the cops left, and the mom and son were going off to wherever the hell the cops took them. And I got out of everything with 8 stitches and a $300 bonus from my boss for handling the situation without anyone getting seriously injured. From what I ended up hearing, the kid had actually got stung by the foxface's dorsal spines, and that sent him into a blind rage. The mom got a plea deal, and she ended up with a huge fine, some jail time, and some other stuff. Our next Reddit post is from Shy Girl Turned Sassy. My entitled aunt has an annoying habit to just storm into my room when I'm changing my clothes. The door would be closed, and if it wasn't locked, she would just let herself in. My protest that I might be in a state of undress fell on deaf ears, as did any insistence that she knock before entering, like a civilized human being. The following incidents happened when I was around 18. My aunt and her husband were over for a visit. I was in my room changing my clothes. My bedroom door has a small defect that it won't lock properly. So anytime it was closed, my dad, stepmom, and stepbrother would either knock or ask if they could come in. Not entitled aunt, of course. She considered herself above such frivolous courtesies. She would come into rooms as she saw fit, and mere mortals would just have to live with it. Unfortunately for her, this mere mortal had enough of her privacy being invaded. My top was off when I heard the door begin to creak open. I yelled, "I'm changing! Wait outside!" As expected, my aunt didn't listen and was about to stick her head in when I swiftly reached the door, pulled it back a little, and slammed it hard into my aunt's thick skull. Not hard enough to crack her skull, but enough to hurt. My aunt let out a howl that instantly brought a smile to my face. She went downstairs whining. I followed. She yelled at my dad about what I'd done. My dad and my uncle, my aunt's husband, were drinking at the time and were uncharacteristically chilled. My dad just looked at her, then looked at me, and said something like, "Yeah, don't do that." My uncle just burst out laughing, as if his wife getting her head banged was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Such dismissal of her grievances were too much to bear for my aunt. She demanded that they leave immediately. My uncle told her that he was in no condition to drive. Besides, he and my dad were going to watch a cricket match, so leaving was out of the question. My aunt dialed my cousin's number, believing wholeheartedly that her son would come to her aid. But judging from her end of the conversation, my cousin was out with his friends and wasn't going to drive all the way over to deal with her stupidity. And why wouldn't she just stop getting into unnecessary squabbles? My aunt had no options left. She just sat down on the couch while holding her head against the ice pack that my stepmom had brought for her. Her anger was boiling over, but was completely ignored by my happy dad and uncle. It was a lovely evening. Our next Reddit post is from Swan Petal Wisp. This happened at my grandparents' place last weekend, and I'm still annoyed. My 5-year-old cousin spilled a little juice on her dress. Totally normal. She's 5. Her hands are basically decorative at that age. I bent down and told her, "Hey, it's okay, we'll clean it up, no stress." Enter my cousin's friend's dad. He decides this is his moment to shine as the CEO of parenting and loudly goes, "What a stupid thing to say. That is why kids these days are soft. You need to be firm. They need consequences." Then I swear I'm not exaggerating. He turns to this tiny child who literally doesn't know this man and says, "You see what happens when you're careless? You ruin nice things." The room went silent, like sitcom record scratch silent. I just blinked at him and said, "Whoa, she's 5. And this man goes, "If she's old enough to make a mess, she's old enough to face discipline." Sir, she's old enough to drink from a cup shaped like a cartoon animal. Let's calm down. My aunt immediately swooped in like a protective mother hawk and basically told him, "You're out of line, leave." And this man actually left, muttering something about snowflake parenting, as he didn't just publicly bully a kindergarten over 3 drops of juice. My cousin looked up at me after he left and whispered, "That man needs a nap." Honestly, she understood the situation better than he did. So my daughter is 4, and for those of you who don't have kids and aren't super familiar with the 4 to 5 age group, to give you some context, my 4-year-old recently cried because I couldn't make trains drive in reverse. As in, she wanted to see the train that went by, and it passed us, and I said, "Sorry, it's gone." And she was like, "Make it come back." And I said, "Sorry, I can't do that." And she started crying. So that's the level of responsibility, personal responsibility, and discipline that we're talking about in the 4 to 5 age group. Our next Reddit post is from Clear Medium. So I'm in college, and I finally got my own credit card this year. Nothing fancy, it just helps me manage my money without asking anyone for every little thing. I was honestly proud because it felt like a small grown-up milestone. Last weekend, my mom came with me to the mall to buy stuff for my younger cousin's birthday. We grab a gift, maybe some snacks, and leave. We get to the store and she picks a bunch of things. Not just a gift, like 3 outfits, shoes, a toy, and then randomly adds stuff for herself too. I quietly ask if we're staying in budget because I know how these trips go. She says, yes, don't worry. At checkout, the total comes way higher than I expected. She looks at the bill and then immediately looks at me like a solution just appeared. She goes, "Put it on your card." I tell her I can't because I'm on a tight student budget and I didn't plan for all this. She laughs like I'm joking. "Why do you even have a card if you can't use it for family stuff?" I say I can pay for the actual gift, but not everything else. That's literally what we came for. She gets annoyed right there in front of the cashier. "Wow, so you're counting money with your own mother now. I raised you and this is how you act?" I tried to stay calm and repeat that I'm happy to cover the gift, and that's it. Then she says the wildest thing. "Fine, give me the card. I'll keep it with me so I can use it when needed. You are clearly not responsible enough." Like, what? I tell her no. She starts doing that dramatic sigh thing and says to the cashier, "Kids these days are so selfish. They forget who paid for their whole life." We end up paying separately. She sulks the entire ride home and later tells my aunt that I refuse to help family, even though I literally paid for the gift that we came to buy. The funniest part is she didn't want help, she wanted control. The moment I said I have a boundary, suddenly my card becomes community property and my budget becomes a personal insult. So the thing about the mom's argument is her paying for everything when OP is a kid is literally required by law. It is her responsibility and obligation. Once a child becomes an adult, it's not their obligation to simply turn around and start paying back all that money. OP's mom is a real piece of work. Our next Reddit post is from Iridescent Apple Pie. I'm engaged to my fiance. I'm Asian and he's white. In my culture, we have what's called a bride price. It's an agreed upon amount of money by both parties the groom pays to the bride's parents or a sibling if the parents are deceased. In my culture, our weddings last 2 days, and it's long and tedious, so I've made it clear to my fiance from the beginning that we'd be having an American wedding instead, and he's fine with it. My sister thinks we're having a wedding in my culture, despite me telling her at least twice in the past that it'll be an American wedding. So all of my many siblings basically left the burden of taking care of our parents onto me not too long after I finished high school. My dad passed away over a decade ago, so it's just been my mom and me. My siblings neither extended a helping hand, nor barely helped even when my mom asked for them for just errands for her, and they always deferred it back to me. Even when my elderly mom had a stroke and needed 24/7 care, I told them I'll need help. They said they'll help, but they don't. Even my brother, who lived with us at the time, barely helped. My mom is in a nursing home now getting proper care as she developed dementia after her stroke. My mom, of course, cannot handle finance. My sister messaged me the other day and wedding planning came up. I reminded her that I won't be having a wedding in my culture because none of my siblings deserve the money. She told me she deserves the money because she helped take care of me when I was younger. In truth, she got married not too long after finishing high school and moved out of state to live with her husband. So she literally only helped my parents babysit me here and there until maybe I was 10 or not even 10. Y'all, my brain stalled, and I couldn't think of where the audacity came from. And every time I think of it, I still can't wrap my mind around the entitlement. So now, wedding plans change, and she's no longer invited, and won't know any of my plans either. Our next Reddit post is from Unspicy Tuna. I went on a cruise over Thanksgiving. I paid an extra $600 for access to the adults-only spa for my husband and me for the week. Some entitled guy brought his kids into the spa. The guy was lying on a lounger sleeping or just ignoring his kid while the kid was jumping and squirming around. The kid looked to be somewhere between 5 and 7 years old and thankfully didn't say anything but was clearly bored and quite active and distracting. Shortly after I noticed the kid, the spa attendant came and nicely and quietly explained that the spa was for adults only and to please take the child out. The mom appeared out of nowhere, collected the child while saying, "Oh, honey, they don't want you in here, so now we all have to leave." I mean, really, even if the spa wasn't explicitly adults only, why on earth would you think a spa, a place of quiet relaxation, would be remotely of interest to a child? Especially since the ship was extremely child-friendly and had an arcade, and a kids zone, 2 water slides, and bumper cars. That was r/entitled parents, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.